Hey, tennis fans, I'm Mike McIntyre, and you're tuned in to Match Point Canada, Canada's premier tennis podcast. This week, it brings me great pleasure to welcome back a very good friend of ours, a former top Canadian professional tennis player, now into her third year as tournament director of the Omnium Banque Nationale in Montreal. Valerie Tetreault, thanks for joining me today. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Good to see you too.
I had to check how many years it's been now, but it is year three, so I guess you must be sort of feeling like you've settled into some sort of a good routine at this point, I guess, in the role.
I have to say a little bit. I feel like, when I'll get to the point that I don't know how many years it's been, that will be a good sign, but definitely feeling a little bit more comfortable, I would say, than maybe in year one, or at least knowing a little bit more what's coming at me, even though, every tournament kind of like brings some surprises and some unexpected things. And you always need to be ready to react, basically.
Well, hey, at least you don't have to react to an Olympic year this year, so that's nice to get that
Right.
out of the way for the next few. And I made the mistake yesterday. I was talking with Oliver Wheeler, the director of comms here for Tennis Canada in Toronto, for those who aren't aware. And I made the mistake of asking him, like, "Hey, how's your summer going?" And of course, for people like you, the summer really doesn't start, I suppose, until the tournament is over. So, how busy have you been in the lead up, and how much of the tournament director work takes place beforehand versus when the event is actually unrolling?
For sure, it's been very busy since the start of the summer. This year in particular, because it's the new format, and we've been preparing for 2025 for a few years, actually, which is good news because I don't think we would have been able to be ready for 2025 if we would have started working on 2025 after the end of the last tournament. But yeah, it's true that for those working on the tournament year after year, we kind of feel like the summer actually starts in August, and it's not very long. But at the same time, we enjoyed this period. It just, we feel the energy. There's something special happening. We're excited for the tournament to start, and there's a whole team working on the tournament, and that is working really hard to make this happen, and it kind of feels like we're all together in this, so it feels good whenever you have a down moment or you feel like you're running out of energy a little bit to be able to share those feelings with some other team members, and it gives you basically the energy you need to bounce back.
It must get so quiet in the offices at Tennis Canada in Montreal and Toronto after the tournament. I'm sure
Oh,
everyone has their vacation alert email messages ready to go out, and well deserved. Um, Tell me now, in year three, how have you grown into the role of tournament director? Like, what parts of the job have gotten more manageable for you, and which are still the bigger challenges for you at this stage?
I mean, I kind of feel like in the last 2 years, those were not easy years in Montreal, especially because of the rain that we got. And so, I think in the end, there was a lot of learning, and maybe that was the best way to kind of like, start my journey as a tournament director, so that now I feel a little bit more equipped, I guess, to react to anything that might be coming my way. But yeah, I mean, as much as, through the years after seeing Eugène Lapierre in this role, I had an idea of what it was like to be a tournament director. I think that I needed to go through the experience myself to better understand what that role was really all about, and then to also understand how I thought I wanted to basically well, what kind of tournament director I wanted to be. And that's becoming a lot clearer to me now. Obviously, there's the whole part with the players, and in terms of building those relationships, making sure that they have a great stay, that they have everything they need. I'm not the only one looking out for them. I have my colleague Richard Curion over here, who also takes a lot of those responsibilities. But that does play a big role because at the end of the day, I mean, the tennis is the product that we sell at the Omnium Banque Nationale, and so we really want the players to feel as comfortable as they should, and then that's how also I think we can differentiate ourselves a little bit from maybe what's done at other tournaments. And that's kind of like what we've been hearing through the years, the fact that, Montreal is very welcoming. There's so much to do, obviously, in the city, but that there's something special about how the team over here just wants to do everything for the players.
Well, I might alienate some Toronto listeners and viewers right now when I say this, but to me, the Montreal tournament has always been my favorite. And that's because I grew up in Montreal, not very far from Jerry Park. And I remember going as a kid with my dad and with my friends. And before the site was big enough, the players would practice at the town of Mount Royal Tennis Club. And that
Right.
was my local club. So you get to go up and see, Boris Becker and Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi there. And for me, those were just like key moments as a kid growing up. So to see what's happened with the tournament over the last 30, well, I don't want to date myself here, but over several years, it's pretty amazing to see what's happened and what you've done with it, even in a short amount of time. Now we're going, and you alluded to it earlier, to a bigger tournament. So for those who aren't familiar, from a 9-day event to a 12-day event. But what really hits me is when you talk about the number of players going from 56 to 96. It's almost double the number of players that you now have to accommodate. How are you feeling with those changes in particular, and how does that make things a little more tricky, maybe on some level?
Yeah, I definitely think that in the planning of 2025, with this new format, the expansion of our tournament, the biggest challenge was the fact that we are doubling the number of players. And yes, it's a 96 May draw, but then there's also a draw of 32 in qualification. There's a doubles draw. And so I would say that roughly it's about 150 players that we are getting ready to host over here. We have the space that we have, meaning that it is limited, and so I feel like we need to be a little bit more creative, maybe than other tournaments, to make sure that we can basically optimize our space so that the players don't feel like it's too small or that something is missing. And so I do think that a lot of efforts went into that this year as we were planning for 2025. And then there's the whole part even about tennis courts in general. For a tournament this size now with a 96 draw to be up to the standards from the tours, we would need at least two more tennis courts, which we're not going to be able to have in the very short term. And so we had to mitigate that and basically find an alternate site, which we did find in Centre Sportif Claude Robillard, so about a 10-minute drive from our main site.
Is that
Where
for sorry to is that for practices or for matches?
That's gonna be for practices. So we're gonna be sending players, as early as, next Friday, to that site as well, where we're gonna have, 5 courts. They've been, resurfaced to make sure, obviously, that we have exactly the same surface, the same speed, as we do at, IGA Stadium. And I think that that will help us because, we saw it before, even with a smaller draw, the players almost fight basically for practice time, and those five courts are definitely going to be welcomed.
Send them back to TMR. I know my friends who live back home would love to see some players there. It's funny back in the day because there's no way they resurfaced those courts for the players, and I'm sure they weren't the same as what's used at the tournament. So I don't know if players get more particular or if it's just a sign of the times, and there are more comforts for the players, I guess, in some ways. Um, I wrote this question down, and I'm not sure if there's an answer to it or not, but I'm curious: does the bigger draw give more opportunities to Canadian players in any sort of way?
It does, and especially I would say on the women's side, where we now have a total of 8 wild cards in the main draw, on top of the 4 that we have in the qualies. So it's a game changer, and I do think that that's one of the other positives, obviously, of this new format. Because at the end of the day, I mean, yes, we're happy to be hosting an international event, but Tennis Canada's mission is also to continue to drive the participation in tennis, and also offer more opportunities in terms of player development for the ones that, are playing competitive tennis. And with the new format, we're going to be able to do just that. And I think it's good news because when you look right now on the women's side, I mean, basically, Leilani Fernandez is the only one who has the ranking to earn her spot into the main draw with her ranking. but all the other ones will need a main draw wild card, and there's good depth on the women's side. Quite a few players ranked inside the top 200 and 300, and so I would say that 8 wildcards isn't too much.
That's great to hear because there really is that depth. And it's funny, on the one hand, you mentioned Layla's the only one that can qualify directly, but I feel that on the women's side, there is so much coming up the pipeline when you've got Vicky Mboko,
Yep.
Carson Brandstein is playing great these days, Marina Stakusic. I'm going to forget a whole bunch of them at this moment, but there's tons of talent there. Which wild cards, just for those who are listening and viewing, have been announced already? Are there any others coming in the next couple of days, or what's the time frame to find out more for Canadian tennis fans?
So, I mean, so basically, we announced the first 2 wildcards when we revealed our main draw player list. Those first 2 wildcards went to Bianca Andreescu and Vicky Mboko. And then this past Wednesday, we just announced another main draw wildcard to Jeannie Bouchard when she let us know that she was ready to retire, but wanted to play one more tournament, one last time in Montreal. For me, it was a no-brainer that we were going to give her this main draw wildcard to give her that opportunity and give the fans also the opportunity to say goodbye, to celebrate the success that she's had in her career and the big impact really that she's had on Canadian tennis in general. And so, in terms of the other wildcards, I mentioned we have 8 total. 3 have been given. The one thing to note is that last summer we made an exchange with the USTA to allow Bianca Andreescu to play the US Open. So there is one wildcard that is going to the USTA, and so you could imagine that it will go to an American player. And we're following what's happening right now in Granby because we've launched this road to the NBO at the beginning of the year, basically to give the opportunity to the player who has performed the best in our different pro events happening in Canada to earn a main draw wildcard. So the race is still happening. It could be Cadence, it could be Kayla, and then once we have that answer, we'll be ready to announce the other main draw wildcards.
Very cool, and of course, a bunch of qualifying wildcards too, I would imagine, as well then.
That's right. In terms of qualifications, how it's going to work is that when we announce the main draw wildcards, we'll be able to confirm the qualifications wildcard, and there's going to be a pre-qualies event also happening starting on Monday. So one of the quali wildcard is going to go to the winner of the pre-qualies.
Yeah, very cool. They did that in Toronto the last few years as well when the women are here, and it's always kind of a hidden little secret of the tournament, I feel like, to see those young Canadian players competing for that spot. Val, you received wild cards in your day, and this tournament was so important to you as a player, I would imagine as well. Can you speak from a player's perspective, a Canadian player's perspective, what it meant for you when you would have those opportunities to come and compete both in Montreal and Toronto?
It means everything. I think for most of those players, and especially the ones that are from Montreal or Toronto or around those areas, just like you, I mean, you grew up basically coming to this tournament every year and watching your favorite players and dreaming that one day you would get to play this event. So when you finally come full circle and you do have that opportunity to play your tournament in front of your family, in front of your friends. There's a lot of pride for sure. There's a lot of emotions. It feels quite special, but it's also an opportunity, in terms of your development to better assess exactly where you are, what you still need maybe to work on to kind of like reach the next level. Um, and it's also an opportunity actually for some to cause some surprises and therefore earn some big points that can help you improve your rankings, and that really gives you also a confidence boost. It's not rare that we've seen some Canadian players, because they're playing at home, because there's all of a sudden that home crowd advantage, perform at their best and actually beat some pretty good players. So we kind of like see this effect, and we hope for this effect again this year.
I think of a match when you say that, it brings me back to Frank Dancevich when he played Nadal. I believe that was in Montreal, and he
Yes.
pushed him. He didn't beat him, but boy, did he ever push him. And yeah, a lot of that I'm sure was due to the crowd getting behind the Canadian player. Do you have a moment from when you played the tournament in Montreal or Toronto that stands out for you against a particularly big opponent, or a moment in practice or anything like that that you recall?
I mean, the last time that I played this tournament, it was in Montreal in 2010, just before retiring, and I think in my mind, like it was pretty clear that I was, on my way out, and I was getting ready to probably retire a few months later. And I played Marion Bartoli on center court. Uh,
Wimbledon champion.
yeah.
Mhm.
And this was my first time playing main draw in Montreal, so it felt even a little bit more special, I would say. Uh, didn't necessarily have the best performance. I remember that day was very, very windy, and center court in Montreal is always tricky. When it's windy, it kind of like goes into circles, so it adds to the challenge. But it was overall a good opportunity, and I was there really wanting to kind of like seize the moment and make sure that I could remember this moment many years later. And I think to this day, I remember it quite well.
Hope you got some videos to show the kids one day, you know? Hey, look at what mom did. Um, hey, let's talk about another player who is retiring shortly, and you mentioned her in your talk about the wild cards, Jeannie Bouchard, who's done so much for the sport in our country. And I really feel like maybe it's recency bias. People don't think of what happened 10, 11 years ago. But to me, that season she had in 2014 is still the greatest season a Canadian tennis player has had, by making the semifinals of two of the slams, and of course the finals of Wimbledon, throw in the fourth round at the US Open as well. I mean, that's just incredible consistency at the majors. What can you say for what she's done in her career and the impact she's had on the sport in our country?
Um, I mean, first of all, I think I agree with you. I think the debate could be, 2019 for Andrescu against 2014 for Jeannie, but you're right in saying that that consistency that she had in Grand Slams was quite remarkable. And in a way, I feel like she really actually paved the way for Bianca and Layla. She did what was basically never really done, or at least for a very long time. Yes, we had Alex Wozniak, who got as high as 21 in the world, but never necessarily had those kind of big performances in Grand Slams. And I think that for any player growing up at that time, just like Bianca and Layla, uh, to be able to see someone who grew up in the familiar place, who trained in Montreal, getting to that level, well, all of a sudden it feels like your dream is a little bit more accessible. And so I do think that that was part again of the impact of Jeannie Bouchard. And I just remember how crazy it was in 2014, because I think, with Jeannie, maybe compared to Milos, who was also having some great results, there was just something about her that you couldn't explain, but that made people want to follow her and watch her. And so I remember the tennis fever in Montreal, and all of a sudden, people who probably never watched a full tennis match, just basically tuning in and even putting their alarm clock to make sure that they wouldn't miss her match at Wimbledon. And so um, that was the genie effect. I also remember that year specifically, even here for the tournament, for our ball kid program, all of a sudden, a lot of more young girls wanted to be part of that program. And I remember back in those days speaking to my colleagues from Tennis Montreal, Tennis Quebec, and they were saying that they were seeing a big difference in terms of signups with young girls. And so I'm sure that right now, if we were to approach some teenage girls currently playing and asking them why they're playing tennis, some of them would say that is partially because of Jeannie Bouchard.
I would say absolutely. I mean, you had hardcore tennis fans like myself as kids who would have watched regardless of who was playing, but many want to see people that they can relate to,
Yep.
people from their own country. And I know for my kids, to get to watch them supporting Felix and Bianca and Layla and Dennis. It's really special to see that they can cheer for some local, role models, I guess. Um, and Jeannie, just one more thing about Jeannie to me that always impressed me is the time that she took for her fans. Like, it didn't matter early in her career, later in her career, she would sign all the autographs, she would take all the selfies, and she always had a smile for the kids that would come up to her, which I thought was so impressive.
And I think for her, it was always so important to spend that time, especially with the kids. I think she understood well the impact or the role model she could be for those kids, and so she always found time. And I don't think we necessarily gave her enough credit for that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'm a little upset I can't make it to Montreal this year to see her off, but I'm sure we'll have her for one final interview on Matchpoint Canada. You know, we were actually the first podcast she ever appeared on
Oh my
anywhere in the
gosh.
world, and this is obviously going back a number of years. And we reminded her of that last summer, and she's like, "Oh my God, I've been on so many podcasts now. I can't believe there was a time where I hadn't done that."
It's
You
the
know,
first
but
one. Yeah.
this is our claim to fame that we're going to hold on to at Matchpoint Canada.
It's a pretty
Um,
cool one, and no one can take that away from you. So
that's right. Val, just in closing, are there any sort of new activations or fan experiences that you want to point out for those that are going to make it to Montreal or thinking of making the trip there this summer?
honestly, I think it's going to be a really exciting event. We put a lot of time and efforts into making sure that the festival feel that we've been able, I think, to build in Montreal, especially in recent years, that's even more present this year. We're working with three new caterers. One of them is Sodexo, which is a caterer that is known in some very big tournaments like Indian Wells, Roland Garros, the Australian Open. And so we're really trying to elevate basically the on-site experience. I know that a lot of that goes through the food and beverage options that are offered on site. New programming, a brand new second weekend of programming, and that comes with the opportunity, obviously, of having this new format with what we're going to call the Tennis Fest. And so overall, I would say that our goal is to make sure that, even if you're someone who never necessarily went to a tennis tournament or never really followed tennis, well, if you come to our event, there's going to be something for you, and I think that's going to be a big win for us this year.
Well, now you really have me kicking myself for not going, especially when you talk about the food. So, look, Val, I wish you a very successful sort of tournament experience in this new format, and knock on wood, smooth sailing this year with all the ups and downs that you've handled so well, navigated so well in your first 2 years as tournament director. There's no one better to guide the ship there. So, appreciate you taking the time today, and à bientôt.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.